actually, just to make a start this morning, guys, actually in the chat box, what are some of the current frustrations you are facing with your team members? I just want to get some examples here. Obviously, this is all about team and team performance. What are some of those current frustrations? And while you do that, I am going to let's talk about the story, the journey of a typical business owner. You start your business, of course, and let's have a look. Thank you, Patrick. Empowering them to make decisions. Murad, too much hand holding. Okay, let's talk about that, Murad, very, very shortly. Sue, unwilling to take responsibility for decisions. I think I've heard that one a few times before, Sue, um, from many, many people. Ownership, Adam. Yeah, okay, there's a theme here. Kath, looking to others, i.e., directors, to take decisions and sort out problems. Ooh, Chris, hand holding. Okay, there's definitely a theme here. Thank you, guys. Well, this story, actually, the typical business owner is very, very relevant then. You start your business, of course, and you've got to make sales. You've got to get the business off the ground, otherwise there is no business. So you're out there and you're making sales and you succeed, and therefore you bring on customers, you bring on clients, and you quickly realize that you need help. You can't do it all yourself. You need help. So you bring on operational people, maybe admin support as well, or finance support. And the goal, of course, in doing so is to be able to delegate and help you so that you don't have to do everything. And yet, as we've seen in the chat box, and yet, as I hear so many times, the frustration is that instead of having more time and headspace, you seem to be involved in more and more decisions, in more and more meetings. The workload seems to be going up instead of down, even though you've hired more people. And this is the classic frustration. And you've mentioned it yourselves, of course, in the chat box. And of course, when you get to that point, it's often overwhelming and unsustainable. And so at that point, you've got to think to yourself, there is a temptation at that point. There is a classic temptation. And the temptation is, well, I'm hiring all these people. I'm investing in wages. And of course, we've seen wage inflation in the last few years go up. We've seen NI, and you're thinking, well, I'm investing all this money. And what's the point if I'm just getting busier and even that maybe there isn't an impact on the P&L? Surely it was easier when it was just me. That is the temptation, guys. And most business owners have been there, where they've reached this pinch point where it's just not sustainable. You should be working less, you end up working more. There is a temptation to revert back to being a sole trader. Now, I take you back at that. When you have that thought, most people have had them, I take you back to the dream. The dream. And the dream for most people when they start hiring people, of course, is that they want their business to work more without them. In fact, that's our definition of a real business. A real business is a commercial and profitable enterprise, i.e., it should make money, but it should also work more without you, the owner. That's the dream for most people running a business. And it's important to fulfill that dream, actually, especially if you have aspirations. If you have aspirations to create a saleable asset, if you have an aspirations to be able to step back, to retire, to semi-retire, to go down the EOT route, the employee ownership trust, or to be able to just have more time for life. Whatever your dream here is with building the business and building the team, it's not sustainable if we see those frustrations that you've all mentioned. So that's the definition that maybe you're aiming for, but not succeeding with. So let's look at today what's getting in the way. Why is the team not able to step up? Why are they not able to take more responsibility? And all those things you mentioned. What's really going on? What's really not working? Now, first thing I'll say, life is a mirror, guys. Life is a mirror. In other words, my team aren't performing. My team don't care. They're not doing what they need to be doing. That is a reflection of your performance as a leader and a manager of your team. It's a reflection of that. Some of you knew this was coming. If they ain't performing, it's a reflection of you. It's a reflection of the leadership. It's a reflection of how well you're recruiting and leading and engaging. And that's the harsh reality. And if you take nothing away from today, guys, that's the harsh reality. It's not them. It's a reflection of what you are doing. So I want to talk about recruitment, leadership, and management skills, and certainly introduce some of those concepts and where you could sharpen up here. But actually, before I do that, I want to look at the identity iceberg. The identity iceberg. Now, what is that? What is that? So if you look at the performance, your performance or the performance of any person, what you see is what you see on the outside. Their results, their actions, their behaviors, their decisions. That's what you see on the outside. However, what you don't see is what's really going on inside. What's driving those results? And what's driving those is what's below the waterline, to use this iceberg analogy. It's their skill sets, their skills as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. How much knowledge do they have? It's also a reflection of their beliefs about themselves, their prices, their industry, all the other things that we have, their values, and their identity. And this is where I really see it going wrong for a lot of business owners. See, the deeper we go below the waterline, the more entrenched these behaviors, these attributes are. And so the identity is very deeply entrenched in us. And what I mean by identity, let me give you an example. You start a business. And many people start a business when they were an employee before. So your identity before is employee. You start a business and very quickly you complete the paperwork and you have this document from Companies House saying you are now a business owner. Legally, you're a business owner. But from an identity perspective, you're still an employee. An employee or a technician, i.e. somebody who's used to doing the work, i.e. the engineer who starts an engineering business, but their identity is still engineer, technician. The accountant who starts an accountancy practice, the identity is still accountant or technician. And the challenge with clinging on to that identity is that if you want to build a team, in fact, if you want to build a business that works more without you, if you want to build a team who are higher performing, so that you can step back and do all those great things we talked about in terms of succession or retirement or just having a more valuable asset. If you want to do that, your identity has to evolve. In other words, it has to change. It has to evolve into a leader. Somebody who wants to engage and lead and manage people. Now, I've had entrepreneurs and business owners openly say to me and my team, Parag, I don't want to do that stuff. I don't want to get involved in all that people stuff. So they're clinging on to the other identity. Now, that's fine, but if you don't want to embrace that identity, how can you expect to build a high performing team? How can you expect to be the leader that people want to work for and perform for if you don't want to do it? It's a major, major blockage. Now, yes, you could delegate some of that stuff. As I've literally had people use that phraseology with me. Yeah, I don't want to do that stuff. You could delegate. Yes, you can delegate management. Yes, you can build a management team to do management for you. Yeah, and some of you have started to do that. But most business owners are not in the position yet to have built a management team. And they're certainly not in a position to delegate leadership. So for most of you, it's your job. And maybe you don't understand what it is. Maybe you don't understand what that entails. It's scary, it's new, it's different. It's not what you're comfortable with. Yep, that's that's the whole thing about identity shifts. But if you don't do it, who is in your business? Who's doing it? And if nobody's doing it, what kind of performance do you think you're going to expect from your team? So it's a deep shifted change, which is why it's so difficult, which is why we have to help people with that, because it's not something you can, it's not a piece of paper you can just buy and fill out and say, yep, I'm now a business owner. Yes, you are legally, but not from an identity shift. So I wanted to really highlight this point, because if you're resisting it, this might be a big reason why. I just want you to think about if that applies to you. Now, recruitment, we need to get recruitment right if you want to build a strong team. And yes, most people, including those of you in this room, how many of you ever made a recruitment mistake? That's pretty much yeah. Up go all the hands. Now, I'm not going to cover recruitment actually today. The reason I put this image up is because I did a whole webinar about this back in the summer of this year, 2025. It was called Are You the Bottleneck in Your Business? And I talked about the four most ridiculously common recruitment mistakes that I see. I spent about 25 minutes going through those. It's all recorded, it's all on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go and look back at some of the recruitment mistakes that you think you're making, go and have a look at that webinar on our YouTube channel. But I do want to talk about leadership, your leadership. And let's start with vision. Let's start with your vision statement. How many of you have defined a vision statement for your business? How many of you've got that written down somewhere? It's written down. All your team knows what it is. And if I went to your business and I said, hey, team, what's the vision? They would all give the same answer. And they would understand, they would be able to articulate what that vision meant to them and why it was important. How many of you are in that position where you've got that vision statement and everyone's aligned, everyone understands what it is and why? Not just what it is, but why is it important? Do your teams know that? Now, why is vision important? Because the vision should serve to enroll, to engage and inspire. Who? Who should it enroll and inspire? Well, of course, your teams. But actually, the first person it should inspire is you. Your teams, your customers, your clients. And I want you to think about this question. If this is not really in place in your business, or if nobody really understands this, why are they coming in to work every day? Why are they coming in to work for you if it's not for a vision? There can only be one reason, guys. There can only be one reason: the paycheck. They will come in to do enough to get paid. And think about what kind of level of performance does that encourage. So we need the vision to engage people. We need it to help them really buy into something that's more than just getting paid. You need that clearly in your businesses. And if you've struggled historically to define this, think about vision in terms of not what you do or what kind of business you are, but why you do it. And Simon Sinek talked about this, of course, famously in his book and his TED talk. And I think it's a great way of really articulating vision in terms of why, in terms of purpose, in terms of why do you exist? What purpose are you fulfilling and serving as a business? That is a great way of engaging your team with your vision, with a reason to work for you that's more than just the paycheck. That's why it's so important that you've defined it and articulated it and discussed it and all your team understand it. Now, you have your vision then. You also need to have goals, written goals. How many of you got written goals in your business? I've asked some of you this many, many times. You need to have the written goals. Now, excellent. A few hands going up. Great. I think this is a great illustration of why written goals are important. This is a letter I received. Courtney was she was a small business owner at the time, about 10 years ago in 2016. She had a small events company, barely turning over 100K. I said, Courtney, what's your goal here? And her goal was to get on the property ladder. And she had no money saved. I said, how much do you need? Around 70, 80K. So we set the goals, and about 2.5 years later, I got this letter. And the really key point here, guys, near the bottom, it's amazing what focus and writing things down can do. That is the critical point. This is why goal setting is so important. We've got our heads full of so much stuff. Goals give us a focus, a direction, and a much stronger chance, therefore, of achieving whatever it is we want to achieve in our business and our lives. So, do you have written goals? The system we would advocate for written goals, as many of you know, is the OKR system, the system that's been around since the 70s. Was it Microsoft talk a lot about using the OKR system? OKR stands for objectives and key results. We use this system extensively in our own business as well as for those we coach. The objective is the goals that you have. The key results are the actions. It's the action plan to achieve those goals. This is the system that should be in place for your business and for everyone in your team. Do they have goals? Do they have key results areas that they are aware of, that have been defined? This takes some time. In our business, we do this every quarter. Everyone in our team has their own OKRs. Everyone in the team, therefore, has to have a meeting, either with me or one of our managers, to go through what those OKRs are. They contribute to them, they explain it, they discuss it, and then they're agreed. Now that's at least a 1 to 2 week process every quarter just to define this stuff. I mean, why would we do that? We do that because it improves people's performance, because everyone knows what they're responsible and accountable for. And so when we create our OKR sheets in our business and for those we coach, we generally advocate up to 3 goals per quarter. Each one of those goals should have an action alongside it. And each one of those goals in your business should have an owner. That's what those initials are. And there'll be an overall owner for the goal. And but there also might be different owners within the team for the actions that have been agreed to accomplish the goal. So you have this real clarity now. It's not just I want more clients. We want five more clients. It's what are the actions that are required, who's responsible for that goal, and who's responsible for each action within that goal. All that stuff is written down in this OKR system so that you and everyone in your teams understands what they're responsible for. Very powerful when you have that level of clarity. So we need vision to engage. We need goals. This kind of goal system to give people clarity on who's responsible for what. You also may need to define some key or critical numbers. Having something measurable and quantifiable is very useful when you're looking to help team members and help define their performance standards that you expect. Now, I know that it may not be revenue, team members may not be responsible for revenue or profit or cash flow, but what other key numbers might you define to help them measure and drive their performance? It might be some sort of project profit measure or some sort of budget versus actual measure, or it depends on the person. But if there's something measurable and quantifiable, it makes life easier for you and for them to understand what does good performance look like. So vision, goals, key numbers or key measurable metric. I want to talk about culture. What does company culture mean to you? Do you really understand what that means? And do you understand why it's important? Now, company culture is not just some fluffy concept that is used by corporates. It's certainly not just a few words you chuck on a website. A few values like integrity and passionate and creative. Because unfortunately, those few words don't really mean much to most people. But when you do this right, it is an absolute proven catalyst to improving your team's performance. When you do this right, and I'm going to give you some examples now of how to do this right, because it's so misunderstood. The other thing I want you to think about is if you don't define the culture that you want in your business, who will? Who will? It will be the other people in your business. And you may end up with the culture you want, but you may end up with a culture that you do not want because you didn't define it. So what's the best definition of culture I can give you? It's a set of behaviors. It's the behaviors that you want to see from your people with how they behave with each other, how they behave with clients. What are the behaviors that you want to see? You explicitly define that. Now, let me give you, I'm gonna run through some examples for you because this is so important. I'm actually going to use some examples from our own business, actually, just to show you how we do some of this. So, for example, one of my points of culture is no babysitting. In other words, there's no superhero in our team that's going to come in and finish a project for you or solve all the problems for you or bail you out when you screw up. Everyone in our team knows that they are fully responsible and have full ownership for their own OKRs, for their own projects, that they are their own superhero. And they all know that. And for example, we got someone in our team, Dan, one of the coaches, who's who's gone and built an entire coaching program to coach managers and leaders within organizations to step up, take more responsibility, and ultimately to run more of the business. Now, I didn't steer him and tell him what to do. He knew that he had ownership and responsibility for that. And it took him several months, but he built it, he designed it. All I had to do was review it and say, yep, that looks great. Because he understands his point of culture. And if you've got a business, like some of you said in the chat box earlier on, if you've got a business where you're constantly being asked to fix things, solve problems, maybe it's because you haven't defined this point of culture in your business. Now, another point of culture. This one is super important if you want to do management better in your business. Weekly team meetings, weekly one-to-ones. It does depend a bit on the size of your business. If you've only got a couple of people, then I would do a weekly team meeting and weekly one-to-ones. You've got a much bigger team, 15, 20, 30 people. You may need to focus primarily on the weekly team meeting. Now, so it's a point of culture in our business. We have a weekly team meeting every Monday, 9:45 a.m. It's in our diaries. It's in our default diaries. It's pre-booked. It's never moved in 18 and a half years. Everyone knows that they're expected to be at the Monday morning team meeting, whether, unless they're ill or it's a holiday. Everyone is there. They don't pre-book it. They don't double book it. Now, when this is done properly, it's a great management tool for your team. What we see, though, is it's not done properly, and it's certainly not done consistently. When we say weekly team meeting, it should be done weekly. Now, why does it get missed a lot or entirely? Perhaps, again, life is a mirror, guys. Perhaps it's because you don't understand the value of having a weekly meeting. You haven't understood the value. So your team doesn't understand the value, and therefore it gets lost, dropped. Everyone's busy. Oh yeah, let's not bother this week, because nobody understands the value. So what is the value? Because for me, this is probably the fundamental people management tool in a business. Critical. So what is the value? So a couple of things we do in our meetings. We always start every weekly meeting with weekly recognition and praise. It's a great system for making sure there's a regular system of recognition and praise in the business. Secondly, it's a communication system. We can communicate, for example, what are the current priorities that everyone should be focused on. We can maybe look at the projects people are working on and say, right, this is a priority for this reason. We can discuss priorities so everyone knows what they should be focused on that week. It's a chance to review progress against OKRs. So we've got those OKRs written, as you should have. Everyone knows their goals. Everyone knows their action plans. In fact, it's all on a system. So me and my senior manager can look at the OKRs. We can look at who's doing well against them. We can look at who's behind. So we can now bring accountability into our business, because we can start asking questions like, hey, how are you doing against that OKR? We can see you're behind. Do you need help? What question do you need to raise? Is there a problem that you want help resolving? So the meeting becomes a forum to be able to discuss and brainstorm and resolve issues and problems, because we're directly reviewing OKRs. So you can review OKRs. Some of you will have projects. You could review project status, like how are we doing against actual versus budget hours, or actual versus budget financially, or resourcing plans. I mean, it's up to you, but you should know what you're trying to review in that meeting. Everyone else should know, so they understand the value of it. So for us, yeah, one of the biggest value is reviewing progress against OKRs and who needs help with that. They know they can bring their issues there, but we also know it's an accountability system. So again, if you don't understand the value, they're not going to understand the value. It's not going to happen. But great businesses with high performing teams do this consistently. And by consistently, I mean every damn week. Okay, I'm going to share two more points of culture that I've picked from our business. Now, this one is Kaizen. Kaizen, the Japanese word for constant and never ending improvement, or the growth mindset, as some people call it. So, we believe that everyone can learn and improve. It's a constant process in life. And so that's part of our culture. I believe that should be part of every small business culture. If you want your team to improve, do you have a culture that encourages self-development and self-improvement? Now that may include actual formal learning, but yeah, once a year or twice a year CPD is not a culture of learning. My culture of learning is daily. So I learn every day. That might be some of you know it's my evening YouTube ritual. Some days it's only 5 minutes, but historically it's been an average of 30 to 45 minutes a day after the kids have gone to bed. That's been my habit, my ritual now for my entire business life. We bring that culture in so you can grow your people. How can you expect people to step up if they don't have all the skills to step up? How can you expect them to be better at technically or in terms of how they manage their time, how they manage people? These are all skills that can be learned if you've got the culture for that. If there's mistakes they're making, if you've got this culture, they understand that they're always looking at how they can improve. Sales, how can you improve? Why wouldn't you have that culture? Why wouldn't you? So, and the fourth point, and again, I think this should be part of every business culture, self-discipline. This is, some of you will recognize this image. This is Eliud Kipchoge, the man that possibly has done what most people thought was impossible. He ran a sub 2 hour marathon, which if you've ever looked at the videos of him running and then tried to emulate the speed he run, most human beings can't run his speed for 1 minute, yet alone 1 hour 59 and 40 seconds or whatever he did for the marathon. The levels of self-discipline required for yourselves and for your team just need to be higher. In our business, everyone knows they have a weekly diary. Everyone plans their diary. Everyone knows where should be spending their time. Everyone has OKRs. They know what their priorities are. They know what should be going in their diary. They know what they're accountable for. There's structure. There's discipline. There's habits. And yes, things happen left field, guys. Of course they do. But there's always a question of how can we be better with self-discipline, especially yes, it's challenging out there, financially, commercially, in all respects, emotionally. Don't wish it were easier, wish that we were better. And self-discipline is critical to that. And going back to Kaizen culture, I'm always looking at how I can improve self-discipline. It's 18 and a half years in. I'm still always asking myself that question. Where can I be 1% better on my daily disciplines or more? So these are just, I'm just sharing, guys, that these are just examples from my own business. of some of the points of culture I've instigated. As I said, these are not fluffy words on a website. These are points of culture that have been defined, that are explained in the recruitment process. They're explained in probation. They're discussed regularly as a team. So they don't just get shared and then forgotten about. They become part of the culture. Our team is aligned with it. If they weren't aligned with it, they wouldn't be on our team. They didn't want to learn. They didn't believe in discipline and all that stuff. If they couldn't be bothered to turn up to weekly meetings, they wouldn't be on our team because it's our culture. It's a culture that I've defined. I want people who align with that. If you don't align with that, that's fine. Don't join our team. It should be the same in your business. You define what you want. You align people with the culture and the behaviors that you want. And when, again, going back to performance, if people feel aligned with that vision, that purpose, that culture, if they feel aligned, just think what that's going to do to their performance. Because they feel like they belong, they feel like it's them, because they align with it. And the interesting thing is, as you make these changes and improvements, as you raise standards, some people are going to get off the bus. They're not going to like it. And that's okay. Because why would you want people who don't align, who don't believe in it, don't believe in that vision, purpose, mission, culture, performance standards? They're going to get off the bus. That's completely normal. And I know it can be deeply uncomfortable for a lot of businesses, but it's a natural process. If you're going to grow your business and keep growing it over years, this is going to happen. And I'll just give you an example. I'll just give you an example, guys, to finish off. So I think this is very interesting. The chap in the middle there, that's Gary. Gary runs a business called Janitorial Express. It's a wholesale cleaning industry business, supplies business in Islington. I think he still runs it. But Gary came to me back in 2010. He'd had that business for more than 20 years. They were declining revenue wise, got hit by the credit crunch. And so he wanted some help, and we started helping Gary. Gary would be emailing me at like 4:30 in the morning. And I'm saying, Gary, why are you emailing me so early in the morning? He goes, well, that's when I start work, Parag. I said, why do you start work at 4:30 in the morning? He goes, well, we're really busy. I said, but you have a team. You had nearly 30 people in his team. What are they doing, Gary? Oh, they're really busy, Parag. Now, we then unravel that statement over the next 3 years, and we looked at how Gary recruited. We looked at how he led his team. We looked at performance measures to put in place, but metrics. We looked at company cultures and acceptable behaviors and non-acceptable behaviors. Training, learning. We looked at all of that, and we started changing it. As we changed it, an interesting thing happened. 27 of 28 of Gary's team left over that 3 year. But they walked. They weren't sacked. They walked. Because as we raised the standards, people chose to get off the bus. And what Gary thought was busy was people who just weren't engaged with what Gary wanted. Because he'd never defined it. And as I kept holding that mirror up to him, he made these changes, realized it was him, made these changes. People got off the bus. He replaced them with the people who did align with what he wanted. And Gary was able to step out, semi-retire, or well, retire, but go and live in Spain, basically. His business carried on running without him in London. We coached some of his senior team to run his business. I haven't seen Gary for more than a decade. Hello, Gary. I haven't seen him because I think he's in Spain most of the time still. That was his dream. That was what he wanted. He wanted the business to work more without him. He was in his 50s. He didn't want to be sitting there every day at 4:30 in the morning. He knew he was doing something wrong. So my point here is these are not soft, woolly, fluffy concepts. There's a commercial benefit to building a business this way, as well as a human and emotional benefit. So, as ever, guys, I want you to think about what you can start to change in your business, of course. And I just want you to imagine how it would feel if you had a business that worked more without you, that you were able to step back from, that you were able to hand over to other people. What would that actually mean to you? Because it ain't easy. None of this is easy. I mean, it's quick if you call less than 5 years quick, which I do, but it's not easy. It can be deeply uncomfortable. But imagine what that would feel like for you, why that's important. Why is it important that you could semi-retire to Spain like Gary? Why is it important for me to have 50 days off a year, which is what I do, because I set that goal on my 50th birthday, and that's what I've done now for the last 2, 3 years. Imagine you feel if you had a business that worked more without you. If you've got some questions about how to make these changes in your business, then let's talk, guys. I want to actually, well, I know you can make these changes with our help. So those of you ready to explore that further and actually talk about how to make those changes in your business, you can book a call with us using that link to understand how can we actually embed this stuff in your business. So I'll put that link in the chat box as well. And some of you are ready to have that discussion. Some of you aren't. That's fine. But the most important thing here is that you are able to make the changes. Whether you're ready to do it with us or whether you're ready to do it yourself, that you can make these changes if you genuinely want a business that works more without you, that your team can step up from. So thank you, guys. Short